Get off that ridge. You're contaminating a hazmat zone. The woman's voice cut across the Montana morning like a knife. I turned to see police in full hazmat suits digging holes in my meadow. Ma'am, this is my land. Your land is a danger to this community, she screamed. I'm calling for your removal. Behind her, workers in white suits froze. One held a detector glowing green. Another pulled a probe from steaming soil. This wasn't contamination testing. This was something else, and they were terrified I'd found out. I'm Evan Marshall, Wildfire Response Coordinator turned reluctant landowner. 6 months ago, my Uncle Ron died alone on 600 acres of Montana Ridge that everyone said was worthless. The inheritance paperwork called it marginal grazing land with no development potential. The tax assessment called it a liability. Uncle Ron called it breathing ground. I reached Pine Hollow Ridge just before sunrise that December morning. Dust settling behind my truck on the old ranch road. I expected silence, maybe the soft creak of pines or distant knock of a woodpecker. Instead, I heard electronic beeping. Sharp, repetitive, deliberate. I stepped out and froze. Down in the meadow, people in white hazmat suits moved in careful formation, boots sinking into frost. A sheriff's cruiser and HOA-branded SUV sat at the trail entrance. Lights off, but unmistakable. One worker carried a handheld detector, screen glowing faint green. Another held a metal probe they pushed deep into soil, causing the beeping to spike. This wasn't a soil test for gardening. This was the kind of equipment I'd seen during wildfire response, used only when officials suspected toxic gases or explosive pockets underground. And those suits weren't cheap imitations. They were real-deal respiratory protection. So why the hell were they on my land? Before I could take another step, a voice floated up the slope. Mr. Marshall. Good morning. The woman who emerged from behind the sheriff's vehicle moved with practiced authority. Mid-40s. Perfectly styled despite the early hour. Carrying a clipboard like a badge of office, she hadn't dressed for Montana wilderness. She wore what looked like armor for corporate warfare, a crimson-red blazer tailored to perfection over a black silk top with a V-neck that caught the morning light, a pencil skirt that matched the blazer, red heels that had no business on ranch land. Her wine-brown hair fell in waves past her shoulders. Red lipstick gleamed even in dawn shadows. Everything about her screamed authority, wealth, and absolute certainty. She was right. Linda Patterson, she said, extending a hand I didn't take. President of Pine Ridge Estates, HOA. I heard you finally made it up here. She gestured broadly at the land behind me. 600 acres of... Well, honestly, not much. I'm afraid your uncle didn't leave you anything but a tax headache. My jaw tightened. Funny. Doesn't look empty from here. She glanced at the hazmat team, then back at me. Routine environmental screening. Pure formality required for unmaintained lots near community lines. I pointed at the respirators strapped to their faces. That's routine. Her smile flickered just a fraction of a second. Gone so fast, an untrained eye might have missed it. But I'd spent years reading subtle cues from frightened civilians during wildfire evacuations. This wasn't concern. This was fear she couldn't hide fast enough. Mr. Marshall, she continued, folding her hands neatly. The HOA just wants to ensure your land doesn't pose risk to the neighborhood. The soil here is unpredictable. Lots of iron. Drainage issues. Nothing valuable. She stepped closer. Honestly, you might be better off letting the HOA take it off your hands for a small compensatory fee. We could relieve you of the burden. A metallic clang echoed from below. One worker jerked back from a fissure in the ground, motioning frantically for another to check readings. The beeping surged. The sheriff standing nearby took a noticeable step away, hand instinctively hovering near his belt. Worthless land. Huh. I stared down at the scene. If this land is as worthless as you say, why are you treating it like a contamination zone? What exactly are you testing for? Linda smoothed a non-existent wrinkle in her blazer. Please don't wander down there. For your safety. Our team will finish soon, and everything will go back to normal. Back to normal. As if any part of this was normal, the workers continued inserting probes, marking red flags across soil like a quiet invasion. Each beep seemed to punch through my ribs with a warning I couldn't yet name. Linda excused herself with a stiff smile and returned to her SUV, but not before glancing back at me, calculating. Unsettled, when she drove away, the sheriff's cruiser followed, leaving the hazmat team to finish whatever they'd come for. I stayed on the ridge long after they were gone, staring at dotted patterns they'd left on the meadow. Uncle Ron had lived here for 30 years. He'd survived every winter, every isolation, every rumor about the land's oddities. He'd written once that the ridge breathes at dawn, a phrase I never understood. But as I watched, thin wisps of vapor rising from the ground, steam, maybe, or something else, I felt that first punch of truth. If the land was truly worthless, nobody would be wearing gear designed to keep them alive. Something under my feet mattered, and somebody didn't want me to find out why. The question wouldn't let me go. Why does worthless land need hazmat protection? I carried that unease to Uncle Ron's cabin. The old place crouched at the edge of timberline like it had been waiting for me. Ron never left. Many explanations, just quiet routines and stubborn loyalty to the land. Inside, the air held faint, mix of cedar, dust, and something metallic I couldn't place. I pushed open shutters to let in light and started sorting through documents the estate lawyer had given me. The first stack was routine utility bills, receipts, tax statements. But midway through the pile, manila envelopes caught my eye. Ron had labeled everything with tight, precise handwriting. One tab read assessment changes, another strangers at night. I slid the assessment file open first. 5 years of property taxes lay inside, each stapled by year. For decades, his annual assessment hovered around the same modest number. Then, 3 years ago, it abruptly doubled. The next year, it doubled again. The final notice, 6 months before he died, showed a number so inflated it nearly matched annual income of someone living on lakefront property. Not a ridge, with no utilities. A 400% jump didn't happen by accident. Someone pushed this, I muttered. I reached for Ron's journal labeled Strangers at Night. Inside, pages were filled with brief entries, tapping sounds along tree line, lights near the meadow, men walking the ridge with gear they hid when noticed. Ron never confronted them. He only watched. He wrote that the land breathed beneath them, that they were listening for something. Steam vents, geological shifts, something else. My pulse hammered as I read. At the bottom of a page dated 8 months ago, Ron had scribbled, "They're not here for danger. They're here for value." Footsteps outside the cabin snapped my attention up. Someone was approaching slow. Cautious. Not bothering to knock, I stepped onto the porch. A man stood there, mid-30s. Nervous eyes. Clutching a binder too tightly. "Mr. Marshall," he said. Voice thin. "Brent Mallory, HOA board member. I just wanted to welcome you officially. The HOA is invested in making sure you transition smoothly. Transition to what," he swallowed. "Just adjusting to community expectations." His eyes darted to documents behind me. Sweat beaded along his temple despite morning chill. Something was wrong with him. Not just shame, fear. Brent turned to leave too quickly, and wind caught a loose paper sticking from his unzipped pocket. It fluttered through air and landed at my feet. He spooned back. Panic flashing. Wait, but I was already bending down. The paper was stamped with private company header GMS, Granger Mineral Services. Subsurface reading report. Confidential. I looked up sharply. Brent froze. I shouldn't have. That's nothing." He stammered. "Just background documentation. Hazmat suits and mineral reports aren't background," I said. His jaw twitched. He backed away as if proximity itself was dangerous. "I have to go." And he fled. I brought the document inside and unfolded it on the table. The language was scientific. Technical graphs of pressure zones. Seismic readings. Temperature anomalies. A specific section was highlighted in yellow. Zone C4. Subsurface activity detected. Gas concentration inconsistent with contamination profiles. Thermal pockets observed. Recommend restricted access. Gas. Thermal pockets. On my ridgeline. My hands tightened on the paper. Ron knew, and the HOA was hiding it. I stepped back outside, scanning the ridge. For the first time, I noticed a faint shimmer above the meadow, barely visible in warming air. Like heat rising off highway asphalt, except it was 40 degrees outside. A soft hiss drifted across the field. I crouched, touching ground. It trembled faintly, pulsing in irregular intervals. Breathing. My phone buzzed. Caller ID, Sheriff Cole Walker. When I answered, his tone was clipped. "Evan, I heard HOA patrol reported you were on your land while we were assessing. Listen. Stay on established paths. There have been shifts under the soil. Shifts of what?" Long pause. "I'm not sure I can say yet. Not allowed or not able." Another pause. Longer. "Just trust me. Don't dig. Don't probe anything yourself." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, then at the ridge, then at the subsurface report on my table. Every piece lined up to form a picture the HOA didn't want me to see. The land wasn't worthless. It was reacting, changing, revealing something hidden beneath. I folded the mineral report and slipped it into my jacket. Whatever was under this soil hadn't scared Uncle Ron away, but it sure as hell scared everyone else. And I needed to know why before they buried the truth or tried to bury me with it. The land wasn't worthless. It was reacting, changing, revealing something hidden beneath. I folded the mineral report and slipped it into my jacket. Whatever was under this soil hadn't scared Uncle Ron away, but it sure as hell scared everyone else. And I needed to know why before they buried the truth or tried to bury me with it. The answer came faster than expected. Before noon, My phone buzzed with 3 notifications from Pine Ridge Estates Community Board. The first labeled my inheritance a potential environmental hazard. The second warned residents to avoid interaction until ongoing assessments conclude. The third accused me publicly of ignoring multiple HOA advisories. I'd been on the property one morning. This wasn't concern. This was coordinated attack, intended to isolate me before I could speak for myself. A pickup rattled down the trail. Sheriff Cole Walker stepped out, adjusting his belt. He wasn't wearing hazmat gear today, but he looked like he wanted to. "Evan," he said, "we need to talk." I gestured to my phone. Already saw the HOA's lies. "You part of this too?" His jaw tightened. "No, but I did get a complaint filed this morning trespassing on your own land. HOA claims you crossed into a protected assessment zone." I almost laughed. "You saw those tests. They weren't safety protocol." Sheriff Walker lowered his voice. "Off record, I know something isn't right. But Linda, she's good at finding loopholes. And she's loud enough to make people believe her. Then how do I fight back?" He hesitated, then pulled out a business card. "Maya Trent, environmental and land use attorney. She doesn't scare easy." I pocketed the card. "So I need a lawyer already." "You're already in a fight," he said, "whether you want it or not." An hour later, I met Maya at Ranger Station Cafe in town. She walked in wearing charcoal suit and carried herself like someone who turned courtrooms inside out. "You're Evan," she said, sliding into the booth. "You've stirred up quite a hornet's nest." "They struck first." She nodded. "Typical HOA escalation. Isolate. Discredit. Pressure. They're building a narrative that you're unstable once established. Any legal push seems justified. Why? What do they gain? That's what I want to know." She opened her laptop. "Sheriff sent me screenshots. That alone grounds for defamation. But real issue is access. They entered your land without authorization. They used some community safety provision. Rare loophole." Maya said, "HOAs can request emergency surveys if they claim neighboring land poses risk. But legitimate concern requires immediate notification to landowner. They skipped that. So they acted illegally. At best, unethically. At worst." "Yes." She folded her hands. "Evan, tell me exactly what they were doing out there." I described everything hazmat suits. Soil probes. The mineral report Brent dropped. The vibrations under the ridge. Maya's eyebrows lifted. "That's not environmental testing. That's exploratory. No HOA has authority to run subsurface testing for mineral or geothermal resources. Then why do it? Because if they claim public risk and get county to reclassify your land, they can force easements. Or force sale." I stiffened. They already raised Ron's taxes 400%. Her eyes sharpened. Then they've been laying groundwork for years. She leaned forward. "I'm filing requests today for full disclosure of HOA expenditures past 5 years. If they paid anyone for geological work, it'll show. And if they deny it, we subpoena." When I returned to the cabin, a bright yellow notice was nailed to my gate. HOA violation, failure to comply with environmental directives. Fine $500. Immediate action required. I ripped it off, scanned it, sent it to Maya. She responded instantly, This is good. They just made their first legal mistake. Before I could process that, another vehicle rolled up. HOA SUV. Linda stepped out, flanked by 2 board members. She moved like she was walking into court as judge. Not accused. Mr. Marshall, she said briskly. Your disregard for safety is endangering our community. You violated preliminary containment zones. Containment of what? I asked. You still haven't told me. She ignored the question. We're giving you one final opportunity. Sign over administrative oversight of the Southern Ridge so our professional team can continue assessments. I stared. You want control of the ridge. Temporary measure, she said smoothly. Until our experts deem it stable. And if I don't, her smile thinned. Then we proceed with formal action. And I assure you, the county listens to US. I stepped closer. I spoke to a lawyer and a sheriff. You're not getting 1 square foot of this land. Something cold flickered behind her eyes. The board members shifted uncomfortably. You're making this harder than it needs to be, she whispered. And you're hiding something larger than a drainage issue. I shot back. Linda didn't answer. She turned sharply, returning to the SUV. As she closed the door, she delivered one final warning through the open window. Mr. Marshall, the land may belong to you, but the narrative belongs to us. The SUV kicked dust into air, leaving me standing with a notice in one hand and mineral report in the other. The fight had officially begun. And whatever truth they were burying under that ridge was big enough that the HOA was willing to rewrite reality to keep it hidden. By late afternoon, I headed toward the Southern Ridge Ron's breathing ground. If the HOA was hiding something, this ridge was the center. I reached the tree line just as sun slid behind pines. Ground was uneven, scattered with shale and patches of compacted soil. I crouched to study thin fractures, spider webbing outward. Soft warmth pulsed through them like heat rising from buried stove. Something alive. Something moving. I pulled out my phone and started recording. A low rumble vibrated through earth. Steady. Rhythmic, not seismic. More like pressure shifting beneath surface in slow, deliberate waves. Ron wrote that the land breathes. I finally understood. I followed fractures until trees opened into shallow basin. Steam curled upward in thin streams, disappearing as it hit cool air. Rocks around vents were stained copper tint that didn't belong on typical Montana ridge. I maneuvered closer. Sudden spike of heat flashed against my hand. I jerked back. Jesus. Not burning, but hot enough to prove one thing: this wasn't decay. This was energy. As I circled the basin's far edge, something caught my eye. Faint grid of footprints, not rancher boots. These were smooth-soled, oniform, marked with rectangular impressions at the toe. Hazmat boots? The same ones from this morning. They'd been here before the official survey. I scanned the perimeter. More footprints trailed toward a logging road. These weren't wandering prints. They were precise. Repeated pathways, like a team had been running covert tests long before they wore badges. I knelt, snapped close-ups, then traced direction until I found a small disturbed area behind fallen log. Something had been dragged out. Soil was smoothed over, but not enough to hide tracks of a large case or container. This was no emergency assessment. This was concealed operation. A crisp crack echoed through the basin like a twig snapping. I spun, no one visible. But the ridge suddenly felt crowded. Who's there? Silence. The suffocating kind that precedes either threat or message, then movement. A shadow slipped between trees. Too fast to track, but not fast enough to miss. Someone had been watching me. A white envelope slid from behind one trunk and landed at my feet. Perfectly aimed. The shadow vanished. I crouched and opened it. Inside, a single note, handwritten in sharp block letters. They're lying. Meet me at old sawmill. Come alone. T-A-T. A. The initials clicked instantly. Troy Alden, former HOA treasurer. The man who resigned suddenly last year. If Troy was reaching out, he knew something. Maybe everything. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. The HOA wasn't acting alone. They had partners, insiders, resources far beyond a neighborhood association. As I stepped from the basin, an SUV engine roared to life behind pines. I caught glimpse of license plate as it tore down dirt road. HOA fleet numbers painted on bumper. They'd been close, watching, waiting to see what I found. I tightened grip around my phone. What I'd recorded wasn't speculation, it was proof. Proof of thermal activity, unauthorized testing, concealed presence on private land. Tomorrow, I'd go to the sawmill. But tonight, I left the ridge with one certainty. The ground wasn't the only thing shifting. So was the balance of power. By morning, I reached the old sawmill. The building hadn't been used in years, but the padlock on side door was freshly broken. Inside, a man stood near the conveyor belt, shoulders hunched, clutching canvas satchel. Troy Alden. He flinched, then nodded. Close the door. I did. He checked windows, then met my eyes. His expression was carved with guilt and months of fear. I shouldn't be here, Troy whispered, but you deserve to know what they're doing. Who? Linda, the HOA. His laugh was bitter. Linda's just the face. There's more behind her than angry neighbors. He opened the satchel. Dr. Elias Granger. Ever heard the name? I froze. The mineral report was from his company. Right. Because Granger Mineral Services didn't run contamination study. They ran geothermal analysis. High value. Potentially millions. I stepped closer. On my ridge. Exactly. He pulled out stack of printed emails, each marked with same GMS header. They discovered superheated pocket under your land 3 years ago. Energy rich enough to attract private investors. I scanned the first email. Linda had written, if we secure administrative oversight of Marshall Parcel, we can proceed with Phase 2 extraction talks. Granger's response, your HOA classification is our only obstacle. Remove the owner's resistance. My stomach tightened. They targeted Ron. Troy swallowed hard. He refused every offer. So they made it harder, raised taxes through board influence, filed nuisance complaints, argued he was neglecting land. He rubbed his eyes. He came to me once, said the ridge was breathing and people were trespassing at night. And you didn't say anything. His shoulders sagged. I was scared. Linda has connections, influence. She threatened to sue me for breach of confidentiality if I talked. He paused. And when Ron died, His voice cracked. I resigned the next day. I couldn't keep helping them. He handed me a binder. Everything I saved. Internal meeting minutes. Payment invoices. Contract drafts. They were preparing to force county to reclassify your land as communal hazard so HOA could assume operational control, then sell energy rights. To Granger for obscene amount. He nodded. The satchel still had weight. Troy. What else? He hesitated, then pulled out flash drive, sealed in clear envelope. His hand shook. Recordings, he said. Board calls. Linda's private Zoom meetings with Granger. Plans to push you out the same way they tried with Ron. I exhaled slowly. This is smoking gun. It's a fuse. He corrected. If Linda finds out this is missing, she'll come after you. After both of us. Then why tell me? His answer was quiet. Because your uncle deserved better than to die fighting them alone. Heavy silence settled. Troy. If I take this to lawyer, do it fast. He stepped toward rear exit. But know this, Linda isn't done. She's already requested emergency HOA meeting tonight. She'll rally community against you before you can expose her. How do you know? He tapped his phone. I still get notifications. Not anymore. I said. He looked relieved or scared for what came next. Be careful. Evan. They won't let this go without fight. With that, he slipped out back door. I stayed another minute. Absorbing weight of everything Troy revealed. My land wasn't just valuable. It was gold rush, wrapped in volcanic steam and buried under mountain of HOA deception. And now I had proof. I drove straight to cabin. Laid everything across table emails. Invoices. Draft contracts. Flash drive. This wasn't random paperwork. It was blueprint of hostile takeover. My phone vibrated. Maya. Got disclosure demand in HOA. Already stalling. What do you have? I sent her pictures of binder and flash drive. She called instantly. Evan. This is huge. Hold on to those like your life depends on it. Feels like it does. Listen. She said. Tone sharpening. If HOA schedules meeting tonight, you go. Don't argue. Don't defend. Just observe and document. They'll try something. By 5 p.m. Every Pine Hollow Ridge resident had received mandatory community alert. Linda wanted a crowd. The meeting room was half full when I stepped in. Conversations died the moment people recognized me. Linda stood beside podium, speaking in low place, consoling voice to older residents. When she saw me, her expression stiffened, but quickly reset into trademark smile. Thin, controlled, dangerous. That crimson blazer still looked like armor. Black silk top beneath caught the overhead lights. Pencil skirt and red heels clicked against linoleum as she moved to the microphone. Mr. Marshall. She called loud enough for room to hear. Thank you for joining. We were just discussing the hazard situation on your property. I took seat near aisle. Didn't rise to bait. Linda tapped microphone. Everyone. Thank you for attending. As many know, the newly inherited Marshall property has become point of concern. Murmur rippled through room. We have reason to believe volatile gases have been detected near Ridge. Our board is working with environmental specialists to determine severity. I clenched jaw, but stayed quiet. Maya told me to watch, not fight. Linda continued. We must prioritize community safety. While we sympathize with Mr. Marshall, we cannot allow dangerous mismanagement of land adjacent to our homes. There it was. She was setting me up as public threat. I raised hand. Linda, may I ask question? She hesitated. Of course. What exact environmental agency is conducting these tests? And why were surveyors wearing hazmat suits if this is only preliminary assessment? A few residents leaned forward. Linda's smile faltered. Equipment is standard protocol. No, it isn't. I cut in. And the company wasn't environmental, it was geological. Granger Mineral Services. Whispers swelled. Linda tried to regain control. Mr. Marshall. This forum isn't for airing personal disputes. Then tell them the truth. I said, tell them why you're filing environmental complaints about land you don't own. Why you're raising safety alarms without county documentation. Her eyes hardened. Enough. You are out of line. Or tell them why my taxes suddenly skyrocketed the moment your board discovered something under my ridge. Silence hit the room like dropped stone. Linda gripped podium. Residents, please remember, Mr. Marshall is new and may not understand how our processes work. She motioned towards stack of notices. This is what matters. We have issued formal citation for non-compliance. Mr. Marshall is facing fines totaling $12,400 unless he cooperates. My pulse hammered. A resident in back stood. Linda, why are we only hearing about this now? Shouldn't community-wide hazard be reported immediately? That one question shifted mood. Others began murmuring. Why hazmat suits? Why wasn't county involved? What's really happening? Linda lifted hands. Everyone. Calm down. Sharp knock on door cut her off. Sheriff Cole Walker stepped in. Hat tucked under arm. Evening, folks. Linda stiffened. Sheriff, this is private HOA meeting. I'm here on official business. He said. Everyone leaned in. Cole approached me first. Evan. We need to talk about complaint filed earlier today. Linda beamed as if victory were already hers. Let me guess. I said, environmental negligence. Cole nodded slowly. Something like that. But I've also received another complaint anonymously about unauthorized surveying on your land. Gasps echoed. Cole looked at Linda. Your board filed for survey access using safety clause meant for imminent emergencies. When I checked county records, no such emergency was logged. Color drained from her face. And Cole continued. Your permit expired last week, which means any continued presence on that land would be trespassing. Wave of murmurs rolled across room. This time, not against me. Linda stepped forward. Voice strained. Sheriff, with respect. We were acting within our authority. Authority. Cole cut in. Must align with law. And right now, law has questions. My turn to stand. So do I. Linda glared. If looks could bury a man, I'd already be under the ridge. Cole shifted to face crowd. Given circumstances, I advise everyone to let this matter go through proper channels. There will be no additional surveying until county reviews situation. A resident raised hand. Sheriff, what about the hazard? Are we in danger? Cole looked at me. So far, nothing indicates public threat. But county will evaluate. Linda sputtered. That is not accurate. We have documentation. Which, Cole said calmly, you can provide in our formal inquiry. Power shifted. The room felt it. Linda retreated behind papers. Mask cracking. She wasn't just losing control. She was losing the narrative she'd spent years perfecting. The moment meeting adjourned. People approached me, hesitant, but curious. Is it true they went on your land without permission? What's really under that ridge? Your uncle, did he know something? But Linda didn't stay. She slipped out side door before anyone could confront her. I followed crowd out. Phone buzzing. Text from Maya, be ready. She'll strike again tomorrow. Tonight. Linda had cracked. Tomorrow. She would break. But I had one thing she didn't, the truth. And now, the community was finally beginning to smell it. By Saturday, Pine Hollow Ridge felt charged, like air before storm. Word had spread. Neighbors were paying attention. Some still watched with caution, but others nodded in quiet solidarity. The HOA annual meeting wasn't optional. And tonight, Linda would be forced to stand in the only room she couldn't control. I arrived early. Maya walked beside me with briefcase full of evidence. Sheriff Walker agreed to attend as neutral observer. The lodge filled fast. Extra chairs lined walls. Even hallway had people leaning in. Linda entered last, flanked by board members. That crimson blazer, again her authority uniform. But tonight, smile strained at edges. Let's begin, she said, tapping mic. We have routine agenda items. I stood. Point of order. I have evidence of illegal HOA activity that must be addressed. Gasps. Chairs shifted. Linda gripped podium. Mr. Marshall, this is not the time. It's exactly the time. I said, and everyone deserves to hear truth. Maya opened briefcase. Soft click echoed like starting gun. I stepped to center aisle. 6 months ago, HOA paid for unauthorized geological survey on my land. Not for safety, not for community, but to evaluate potential geothermal value. I raised first document Granger's invoice. Murmurs erupted. This survey was conducted using hazmat gear. I continued. And when I inherited land, HOA immediately filed environmental complaints to pressure me into selling. Someone near back spoke up. Is that true? Did HOA really do that? Linda leaned into Mike. These claims are unfounded. Then explain the tax manipulation. I said, holding up county records, explain why my uncle's assessment quadrupled after your secret survey. A man in second row stood. My taxes went up too. Is that connected? Linda's voice sharpened. These are confidential matters. And yet, I interrupted. You offer zero transparency. Because transparency would expose what you're hiding. I pulled out phone and played video of Hazmat team drilling into ridge. Residents gasped as footage showed glowing readings and nervous retreat. This is not safety assessment. I said, this is geothermal surveying for extraction. Then I delivered blow, and HOA planned to seize my land for it. Room erupted. Shouting. Demands for answers. Linda banged gavel. Order everyone settle down. But nobody settled. I waited until noise ebbed. Someone here knows exactly what Linda did. Someone who's been living with guilt? Every head turned as man stood slowly from third row. Brent Mallory, same nervous worker who dropped confidential envelope. Brent's hands trembled as he made way to aisle. He looked pale, exhausted, scared. He swallowed hard, then spoke. Everything he's saying is true. Wave of shock ripped through hall. Linda's face drained. Brent, sit down. You don't know what you're talking about. But Brent kept going, voice cracking. You told us to falsify reports, to label geothermal activity as contamination risks so county would deem land dangerous. His voice shook. You told us to push Mr. Marshall's uncle until he gave up property. You could have heard pin drop. Linda lunged toward him. That's enough. But Brent stepped away, shaking harder. I'm done lying for you. Room exploded, again louder than before. Accusations. Outrage. Disbelief. You lied to us. You used our fees for this. You tried to steal his land. A woman near front stood, tears in eyes. My husband defended you for years. You lied to all of us. Linda tried shouting over them, but chaos drowned her out. Brent gripped chair back to steady himself. I can't do it anymore. I won't. And just like that, first domino fell. But we weren't done, because what happened next depended on single question. Would community demand justice? Or would Linda claw back control? That answer was seconds away. The moment Brent finished speaking, tension snapped into open revolt. Voices collided. Chairs scraped. Half the residents surged toward stage. Linda slammed gavel so hard it cracked. Order. But control was gone. Everyone. Mr. Mallory is confused. No. New voice cut through her lie like blade. Every head turned. Troy Alden stepped from aisle. Manila folder tucked under arm. Small black USB drive held firmly in hand. Former HOA treasurer, missing from meetings for months. Stood straighter than I'd ever seen him. Linda, he said. That's enough. Linda went pale. Troy, what are you doing? What I should have done before Ron Marshall died. Maya exhaled beside me. She knew. Eyes I did. That next 60 seconds would determine everything. Troy walked past rows of residents and climbed onto platform. He wasn't rushing. Every step looked deliberate, like man walking toward confession. He placed USB drive on podium gently, almost reverently. In here, Troy said, facing crowd, are recordings from closed-door HOA calls. The ones we were told were too sensitive for public minutes. Stunned silence. Recordings. He continued, voice hardening, where Linda and certain board members discussed ways to force Marshall property into foreclosure. Someone whispered, he has recordings. Troy nodded. 3 years worth? Linda lunged for drive. You cannot. This is illegal. Troy slid it from reach. No. Linda, I preserved evidence. Because you were breaking law. Room erupted again. Play it. Let us hear the truth. You lied to us. Linda raised trembling hands. This is being taken wildly out of context, but it was too late. Sheriff Walker stepped forward. Troy, is there anything that compromises ongoing investigations or private resident data? No, just conversations about land acquisition scheme. Walker accepted drive, but Room didn't want him keeping it private. Sheriff, please. One resident said, we deserve to know. Cole hesitated, then nodded. I'll play one excerpt. Rest will be reviewed by state. He connected drive to meeting laptop. Speakers crackled. Everyone leaned in. Everyone held breath. Audio file loaded. Then, Linda's voice-filled hall with icy clarity. Harold Marshall won't last much longer. He's old. Isolated. Financially strained. We just need him to break. Once land is abandoned, we move it into common holdings. Gasps. Hands over mouths. But recording wasn't done. Second, voice board member responded, "What if he doesn't break?" Linda laughed. Cold, confident sound that echoed off walls. Then we destroy his credibility. Spread rumors. File safety complaints. Make community fear him. No one can fight an HOA alone. File clicked off. Silence. Heaviest silence I'd ever felt. Lasted 10 full seconds. Then, room exploded. Residents surged to feet. Outrage. Boiling over. You targeted a DIYing man. You tried to steal his land. People stepped away from Linda as if she carried contagion. Her last lifeline snapped. She grabbed microphone. Voice breaking. Those recordings were manipulated. He's lying. But board members behind her were already standing. Leaving seats. Stepping away. Disassociating from sinking ship. "Don't walk away," she screamed. Sheriff Walker raised hand. "Ma'am, you need to calm down." "Calm down," Linda shrieked. "They're criminals." But even she heard it in own voice. Wild, frantic edge of someone who'd realized fall had already happened. Residents demanded answers. Documents. Compensation. Justice. You terrorized that old man until he died. Linda finally backed from podium. Chest heaving. Eyes darting between exits. But before she could flee, Troy held up one more piece of paper. "Linda," he said quietly. "This is board's signed authorization to negotiate geothermal extraction rights dated 4 months before Harold died." Collective hiss spread through hall. "And this," Troy added, lifting second sheet, "is agreement with Dr. Elias Granger, the geologist who surveyed Evans' land in hazmat suits." Maya stepped forward. "This isn't just immoral. It's criminal. Fraud. Coercion. Illegal land interference. Misuse of HOA funds." Sheriff Walker straightened, eyes on Linda. Everything slowed. Everything narrowed to single point. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, voice firm. "I think we need to discuss this outside." Residents quieted instantly. Linda stared at him, realizing exactly what that meant. Her voice was barely whisper. "Am I being detained?" Cole didn't smile. "You're being questioned. Bring your documents." And just like that, last of her power evaporated. She walked out shaking, clutching papers that no longer protected her. Community parted like water, refusing to meet her eyes. For first time since inheriting land, I felt it, the shift, the turn. The moment where truth stopped being whispered and started being believed. But justice wasn't finished. Not until law arrived, and it was coming faster than Linda realized. By Monday morning, Pine Hollow Ridge had become pressure cooker. 3 unmarked SUVs and 1 sheriff's cruiser rolled through neighborhood entrance. State investigators. Suits. Badges. Clipboards. Purpose in every stride. Sheriff Walker approached me. "Evan, you should come along. They'll want your documentation." I grabbed steel case holding whistleblower records, Uncle Ron's journal, tax files, Troy's statements. By time we reached HOA building, crowd had formed. Residents stood on sidewalks, arms folded, eyes fixed. One investigator knocked on locked office door. Another produced warrant. Door swung open. There she was, Linda Patterson. Hair unkempt. Makeup smeared. Blouse wrinkled. Gone was perfectly composed HOA president. This was woman who'd been awake all night rehearsing excuses that wouldn't save her. Mrs. Patterson. Investigator said, "You are being detained for questioning regarding allegations of fraud, coercion, misuse of HOA funds, and unlawful interference in private land rights." Gasps rippled through crowd. Phones came out. Linda tried to speak, but voice buckled. "This is misunderstanding. Ma'am, please step outside." When she was escorted past me, eyes locked onto mine, not with defiance, but desperation. "This is your doing," she whispered hoarsely. She wasn't wrong, but fear made her sloppy, and sloppy people talk too much. Investigators moved into office, cataloging files, computers, financial ledgers. Sheriff Walker motioned me forward. "Let's give them what you've got." I opened steel case and laid out everything, falsified environmental warnings, emails Troy smuggled, hazmat footage, survey, invoice, journal entries from Uncle Ron. Investigators' expressions shifted with each document. This wasn't negligence. One said, "This was systematic." Next line, "Hit harder, and this wasn't just HOA misconduct. This is criminal conspiracy." Deputy stepped in. "We've located Dr. Granger's company truck behind Ridge." My stomach tightened. Investigator shook head. "Granger's already fled. Office empty. Phones disconnected. Coward." But not surprise. Outside, residents swarmed Troy. Some shook hands. Others hugged him. Meanwhile, Brent stood alone near curb. Hands shaking, I walked over. "You did right thing." He swallowed. "Too late for Ron." "No," I said quietly. "Not too late for truth." Behind us, investigators escorted Linda into waiting cruiser. Cameras flashed. Residents shouted questions. Linda finally snapped. "You fools!" she shouted through open door. "You have no idea what you're throwing away. That land could have made all of us." Deputy closed door before she could finish. Cruiser pulled away. Some people cheered. Others cried. Few just stood in shock, but nobody defended her. Not anymore. Sheriff Walker joined me on sidewalk. Board will dissolve temporarily. New election scheduled. County oversight. Until then, good. He studied me. "You know what this means. Land's future is now in your hands. And if investigator suspicions are true, what's under that ridge is worth fortune." I nodded. "I know. One more thing," he added. "Granger didn't run because of HOA. He ran because he knows state's about to verify geological activity." He lowered voice. "When they confirm what he found, this valley will change." I looked toward Ridge, my ridge, where thin trails of steam rose quietly from soil. For first time, I understood what Uncle Ron meant. The ground breathes. Question now wasn't whether law believed me. It did. Question was, what land would reveal next? 3 weeks later, envelope arrived. Thick, sealed with state crest. hand-delivered by courier who asked me to sign twice. I didn't open it inside cabin. I walked to ridge where steam curled from earth like breath from giant sleeping under soil. Same spot Uncle Ron kept returning to. Same spot HOA tried to fence off. Same spot Hazmat team poked and prodded. I broke seal. First page was summary. Montana Geological Survey confirms high-yield geothermal reservoir beneath land known as Pine Hollow Ridge. Estimated output multi-million-dollar renewable capacity. Potential for long-term. Low-impact energy production with minimal surface disruption. My land. Uncle Ron's land. Land Linda called worthless. But report wasn't just scientific. It documented everything unauthorized surveys. Manipulated tax values. Attempts to seize portions under fraudulent emergency provisions. Every crime she committed was now part of public record. By time I finished reading, Valley felt different. Not louder. Not brighter. Just honest. As if land itself had been waiting for me to finally hear it back at cabin. Sheriff Walker arrived with fresh pot of coffee. Board's been dissolved. He said, "County's appointing temporary leadership. They want you on advisory committee. I'm not running an HOA." He smirked. "Good. We're not keeping one. Community wants stewardship council instead. Transparent. Volunteer-led. Known enforcement." For first time since inheriting Ridge, I felt shoulders lighten. Then another truck pulled in. Woman stepped out mid-40s. Steady posture. Wearing field vest with Conservation Trust logo. Donna Voss. Western Land and Waters Trust. "We read state report and your uncle's notes." She paused. "We'd like to speak about possibility of protected geothermal reserve, one named in your family's honor." It took a moment to respond. "A reserve not drilling project." She nodded. "Your uncle was right. Land is alive. There's way to benefit region without tearing it apart. That mattered more than money, more than politics, more than anger. This valley deserves that." I finally said, "Over next week's." We worked out agreement. The Ron Marshall Preserve jointly managed by state and trust. With me as founding steward, it meant geothermal energy handled responsibly. Scholarships for local kids. Firebreak restoration. Wildlife corridors. It meant turning everything HOA tried to steal into something that belonged to everyone without giving land away. Announcement meeting was held in same lodge where Linda once ruled. Only this time, chairs were arranged in circle. No podium. No hierarchy. When crowd settled, I stepped forward. My uncle protected this land. I began. Not because it was valuable, but because it mattered. And now we know why. Today we close door on everything done in secrecy and open one built on truth. People clapped. Some cried. Sheriff Walker added, "For years, this community trusted wrong people, but trust can be rebuilt. And today is where it starts." Troy was there too quiet, humbled, but no longer broken. He handed me folded note after meeting. From Uncle Ron. Written year he died. If I ever leave this place behind, I hope someone sees what I saw. That land is worth more than money, more than power. It's a promise. Keep it alive. Evan. I didn't realize I was gripping note until knuckles whitened. Later that evening, as sun dropped behind ridge. Thin steam veils rose again. Soft pulse from earth beneath my boots. Land wasn't angry, wasn't afraid. It was awake. And for first time, so was community. Justice didn't just end with Linda's arrest. Justice meant restoring what she tried to erase. I stood at ridge edge, breathing cool air, and whispered, I kept the promise. Uncle Ron, the land speaks again. And this time, everyone would hear it.